How is it going, everyone? Thank you for joining me. Today I'm very excited because we get to show you one of my favorite openings that I play 90% of the time. And kind of in contrast to other openings that you may be familiar with, this opening is played not only by beginners and intermediates, but also by grandmasters. I've seen various videos of grandmasters winning with this opening, and that is one way to prove how powerful it is. So let's not waste any time and let me show you the Queen's Pawn opening, or Queen's Pawn Gambit. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term Gambit in chess. It essentially means that you're giving away a piece, usually a pawn, in order to get some positional advantage. And the difference between most gambits and the Queen's Pawn Gambit is that in the Queen's Pawn Gambit, you get the piece back immediately. So let's get into the Queen's Gambit. So it's d4, obviously Queen's Pawn, kind of suggested by the name, and it's against d5. And luckily this is something played very often, very often actually, by your opponents. So you guys can, out of maybe the 90 times, if you play this 10 times, you'll probably receive this move more than half of those times. So it's very good. Next, you're going to go c4, and this is the Gambit, the Queen's Gambit. So I'm going to show you both variations if black takes or if black tries to protect. Let's first go over the black taking because it's very simple, very short, very sweet, and it's very good. So if black takes, first of all, if you kind of, maybe you're playing 1 minute really quickly and you want to get the pawn immediately back, then you can easily get it back by just moving your queen here. You're forking the king and the pawn, which means that after black protects, whichever way black wants to protect, you grab the pawn back. So let's say black goes here, you can grab the pawn back. And this is kind of the end of the Gambit if you choose that line. However, you can already see the effects of the Gambit because now you have two center pawns, instead of one for black. And also this center pawn here is very weak because it cannot move 2 squares forward. So it's a weak center pawn. It can only move here. And so you're very quickly going to have control in the center. And this queen helps a lot. Now let's go back and let me show you what I would suggest. So once again, if you're in a time hurry and maybe you want to play this Gambit very quickly, then by all means do the queen variation and get the pawn immediately. However, what I would suggest if black takes is go for a different variation and push this pawn up, maybe just 1. You can go 2 if you're feeling if you want to control, I guess, from the start. But I think it's a little bit more dangerous for knights. If your opponent decides to push some of the knights out, then moving 2 forward can be a little bit dangerous. So I would suggest only moving 1 to here. But what this does is now frees your bishop, and this is now the way that you're going to capture. The only disadvantage with the previous way is that your queen was kind of in the center, and it can be helpful to have a queen in the center controlling, but not that early on. Black, and I didn't show it, but black could have simply played bishop here once the bishop was here, kick the queen back, and already you're losing tempo. So it's a good way to get control with your pawns, but your queen's going to have to drop back. So if you don't want to capture with the queen and have to draw a bit back, I would suggest to do this. It's developing in the center, very good, and you're also threatening this. And this is where the fun comes in. The best move for black maybe is just moving the knight here, getting a little piece of the center for black, and solid move. But if black, and from here you can consider the gambits, I guess, complete. You can now play the queen's thing, and it's a lot stronger as this diagonal is controlled by bishops, and it's just a better position for you. And also you can retreat to more squares. For example, you can try to go here, for example, and so it's a little bit more powerful now. But if black goes and tries to protect this pawn, so if black is like, oh, you know what, you can capture it, so let's go ahead and push this pawn here. And this is mostly played by beginners, but you know, you can see it, maybe some people blundering like this, especially if you're playing very quick games. against someone who's not familiar with this opening, it can be very, very fun to do this. Because now, you're going to play this move here. You're going to play a4. And let me show you what happens if black makes the second big mistake and tries to protect this even further. So if black tries to go here and protect this pawn, you're going to go and capture. After black captures, you're going to go and you're going to move queen here. By now simplifying the pawns on these two or these three squares even, you're now giving yourself a really strong diagonal against this this rook, and this guarantees that you're going to get a minor piece. If your opponent is strong, then you're not going to get the rook. Your opponent has, a couple moves. First, your opponent can play this with the knight, and if you capture, then your opponent. So if you capture, your opponent plays this move here, and well, you're going to have to retreat. If you play, and obviously that now protects the rook as well. If your opponent plays a move like this as well, it's also fine. I mean, it's not as good, but now you can move your knight to this square, for example, and again, protection is given. So you're going to get a minor piece. If black, after you do this move, black goes ahead and protects the pawn. Most common is this. Very strong. If you capture, after black captures, although you did trade an outer pawn for a central pawn, very strong position. You can't push this, so that because this pawn is very controlling in the center, and you have ideas of now enabling some, not there, but enabling some diagonals because of that. Actually, all your diagonals are enabled, so very, very strong. So because of that, you're going to go ahead and if, not there, if this does happen and black plays this, which is the most common response, you're going to go ahead and play this knight here. Your idea is you want to start moving your, wow, my diagonals are not strong today. You want to start moving your bishops out. And right now, the thing that's blocking this bishop right here, well, there's two things, but usually this gets sorted out. Either you trade or you push forward. So usually this gets sorted out. But you want both of your diagonals to be functional, usable. You can see that black already trapped one of his bishops, and if you play a move like this, the second one is also trapped. Well, black has a way to move it like this, but still, it's very controlling. So you want to play this move here. It would allow you to move this bishop out, but if you only played it here, then this bishop is now trapped. So you want to play both ways, or both squares, which is why you move this knight here. I guess you push this pawn, or not push, but you attack this pawn, but that's not your main aim. Your main aim is not to push this, and because of this, black is usually going to respond with the knight right there, and that's the best response for black. And now you're gonna go ahead and move your bishop right here to g5, and very good move. First of all, if black does something like this, let's say, you can capture, and after capture, now you can go ahead and push this here, because if black captures, you capture, and if black doesn't capture, then well, you have three wonderful pawns for you in the center, and a really nice knight. And either way, you have ideas of developing. And also, your bishop is now semi-free. Soon you're going to want to play a move like this, and now your bishop is indeed free. So, very strong. Now, if black decides not to, well, it doesn't really matter what black does, but you can also decide to not necessarily go against this knight yet and capture it. You can just keep your bishop here and start developing. One of my bishops has disappeared. And start developing. That could look something very, very close to something like this. And I'll skip black's moves. And black doesn't have a whole lot of moves. This bishop is kind of trapped. This bishop can move, but not for long if you want to trap that. And maybe that is something that you do. So this bishop is trapped. This bishop is trapped. This knight can go for black. That's all right. And maybe you're going to see something like this in a queenside castle. but that's going to take quite a bit of moves. So let's show you what white can do in all those moves. White has ideas of going here with the knight, going here with the pawn, here with the bishop, and then castling. When you play a London system, which is also a queen's pawn opening, you tend to castle on your queen's side. For me, I don't find that to be the case when you play the queen's gambit, because usually, especially if black captures that pawn, you're now sacrificing a couple of pawns on this side, making your position on the queen side quite weak. So usually I go ahead and castle this direction on the king side castle. But if we go ahead and castle, what a position, wonderful position. You can see two very nice pawns in the center, and you also have ideas of going here. In fact, that's a really strong move, obviously, grabbing this knight. And for that reason, usually you might see something like this with the queen before all of that. But still, you have ideas of going here. And anyways, you have two very nice pawns in the center. A nice pawn making a little series of pawns. Two wonderful knights controlling not only the outside, but a huge part of the center. In fact, together controlling all of the center pieces. You have a queen that's, not been used yet, but has a lot of potential. And two rooks that are ready to get into the game at any point. And a really safe knight, or king. So, really great position that you can get yourself into. Very strong, very, very strong. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this, this little opening that I showed you. And if you guys want to see other openings, leave them in the description. I'm always down to play around and figure out the best moves and worst moves of openings and then show you guys. So leave opening suggestions down below. And other than that, I'll see you guys in the next video.